everyone, and welcome to GuildGab episode 60. This one is all about raids in Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. I'm your host, AuroraPeachy, and with me today is MMO Inks, and we're going to be talking all about raids, the Spirit Veil. So, just to give you guys a little pretext here, Inks and I are in the same guild. We're in Maven. We've been doing raids with Maven, and we have like two groups. And we've raided together for about an hour, but we're in separate groups, so our base raid time has been in separate groups. So how has your experiences so far been? What do you think of these? What do you think of these raids?
Yeah, so we've had 2 raid days so far, both of us, 3 hours at a piece. I jumped in for an hour just to help out Peachy's group, Group B, the first day because somebody had to leave early. You guys tend to raid much later at night.
We do.
But yeah, I mean, it's been, before we get back into it, it's been absolutely fun. We've been I really don't think, the 10 people, 11 people plus that we've had coming in and out of groups, subbing for people or whatever, I don't think no one, I'm not saying it properly, everybody has been having a great time. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has left the raid feeling like disappointed or feeling like it's not fun for them, or I don't even know that they feel like the content's not for them. Like everybody who's been part of the groups wants to improve in some way, mm-hmm. to make themselves better, to play better, to learn to play better, to try and live up to the content and try and clear it and kill bosses and such. So, I think that's a real big feather in the cap for ArenaNet to say such a thing. I've done raiding in a lot of other MMOs, and that's certainly not always the case. And I think some of it has to do with the raid design itself. I think some of it has to do with the way that there's not really a gear treadmill. There's no gear treadmill in Guild Wars 2. And, I was talking to Crescents, one of the guys, he's actually in chat, but one of the guys in who's our tank for our group, and he brought up an interesting point. As we get past this wing and into the next wing, and I know I'm already looking way ahead, we haven't even killed the first boss yet, but as we get into more and more wings and more raids, because there's no gear treadmill, the nice thing is that these encounters will continue to be difficult, mm-hmm. regardless. You can only get better as a player. Your gear isn't going to get better to help you in those situations. Now there will be nerfs and buffs to classes, and so those things will change with the tide, so to speak. But your actual player skill is going to shine more and more as you get more accustomed to raids and things like that. So it's a big bonus, and it's a lot to look forward to, and I think it's a lot to really be excited about for the future of raiding and things like that.
Yeah, that makes Guild Wars 2 different than other games, because normally, now I haven't done raiding in other games. This is my first raiding experience. But in other games, so you'll do the first raid, you'll get, your high-level gear that you need in order to do the next raid, correct? And then, right. On and on and on and on. And then when you go back to that first raid, your gear is so high it's no longer challenging. You're just going through the first raid. I mean, I've sat and watched a friend in World of Warcraft just solo raids. Like, she just goes, into one of the early ones. She's got her high level gear, and it's not challenging anymore. It's basically obsolete content, especially as far as the challenge goes. So that's, as you said, your player skill is going to get better. There's going to be new elite specs that are released. There's going to be new builds, because of trait resets and stuff. So you can go back, years down the line when there's other raids, we can come back to this first raid, and even though it's going to be a different experience because of those changes, it's still going to be challenging. It's going to be just as challenging as far as the difficulty, because there's not this gear treadmill. And I think as far as the sustainability of the game and the replayability, ArenaNet has done brilliantly in designing this entire system.
And so far, it seems like their pacing is pretty much on point. Now, with the exception of a few outlying guilds, perhaps, or groups, we'll call them superstar groups, I don't know that many people have actually cleared the entire raid. Now, I do know that a lot of groups, a lot of the more well-known groups, at least to me, maybe not to everybody, but to me, they're all basically on the second boss, or they're just getting ready to clear and kill that second boss and move on to the final boss. And a good deal of people within day, there was a couple of, so like if you follow Reddit or the forums or wherever, and I don't know how like, I don't know how good of a sample this really is, but you were seeing people saying, there was a handful of people, 10 groups, 20 groups, whatever, who were saying, yes, we killed the first boss on day 1, time to move on to boss 2, and then you didn't hear anything from them again. And on day 2, you had a lot more people saying, okay, we killed the first boss. And then you were hearing some whisperings, or at least I was hearing some whisperings from people saying, okay, we're on the second boss, and we're this close to killing him, but we haven't quite killed him just yet. So, to me at least, that shows that there is enough of a difficulty increase or a curve there that says that, look, we get to the second boss, we're doing well, we're getting him within 5%, 10%, whatever the case is, but we're just not quite there yet. We need another hour or 2 hours to hammer away at him and really get it done. And I will say that some of these groups that are getting to these second bosses, that are putting in the work on these second bosses, are putting in a lot more than 3 hours worth of time. They're putting in a considerable amount of time. I know just by looking at my friends list, I log in and I'm saying, I can log in at 5 in the morning and they're in raiding, and it's like, you guys are absolutely crazy. I love you to death, but you're absolutely insane. And, you know, I like to follow the progress of how people are doing on raids. It's not, I don't feel this urge that I need to be the first one to do it or something like that. As long as I feel like I'm making some real progress myself, or my group's making real progress, which we have definitely had that, then I'm okay with not being first, as long as we clear it in a, you know, respectable amount of time. And I think we're still well within that range of doing it. And the good news is that this content, and a lot of people I think were like kind of scared about this, but this content is not unpuggable, at least for the first boss. You know, these groups of people getting together who are not necessarily part of the same guild. Somebody made a post on Reddit where he was like, look, we had like 4 players, 4 friends who put a group together. They determined that the tank was extremely important for positioning of the boss, and then they built the rest of the team around that tank, and they brought people in and out for, I think he said, about 6 hours until they finally got a kill. You know, they would get 10 people and 4 of them would leave, so they'd get 4 more, looking for specific roles and spots to put it together and really build a pug out of it. And after 6 hours, they were successful with it and were able to get the kill. So it just goes to show you that if you put in a little effort and work and time, even as a pug group, this is not undoable content for you. This can be done. It does require effort. It does require coordination for sure. But, you know, the mechanics, the boss itself is not overly difficult to figure his mechanics out or anything. It's not too crazy complex, but it's really about, you know, learning the fight, which, like I said, is not too complex or hard to do. And there's lots of guides out there now to kind of tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what to look out for. It's a matter of execution at this point, you know.
Yes.
Don't get killed. Don't stand in this spot. Watch out for these things. You can CC them. You can knock them back with sparks. These are the attacks he does. This is the expected amount of DPS via the timer that you need to do, and that whole experience, you know, has been really, really, really great. Another great point is that, you know, you don't necessarily need all ascended gear, at least for this first boss. You know, we have people in our group who are not full ascended, and people who have beaten the Veil Guardian have not been full ascended people. Some of them have a number of exotics, or like all exotic armor, but they have ascended trinkets, etc. So, and I think that's a really great thing as well, because it allows you to work on and progress to get ascended gear, to make those kills a little bit easier, a little less time consuming, as you not only get better as a player, but you get to that top gear if you don't already have it. So it's just really been a great, fantastic experience so far. I really look forward to when we get our first kill and when we're able to move on to the next boss. And I've been hiding myself away from like the Gorsival talk. The tongue boss guy is the second boss, and I've been hiding myself away. I don't really want to know what he does or his strategy. I want to go in there, at least the first time. I want to go in there, get totally smashed, and then say, okay, what is he doing? And then figure it out, you know?
Right.
you know, once we've made an attempt or two or a couple attempts, I don't mind looking up and saying, okay, this is what we're not doing that we should be doing, right? Look for ways to refine your strategy. That first attempt or those first couple attempts, I just want to go in and have him smash me and say, okay, well, that was a thing. Let's do that again and maybe not get stepped on this time or whatever the case is.
I can't
So,
believe how fun it is. And again, coming from someone who's never been a raider, and I've never been a hardcore player in Guild Wars 2, or hardcore casual is what people like to call me. You know, I've never been obsessed with builds and, you know, having an exact, the you know, the highest spec, the going with the meta. Like, I just kind of set my build for what is, you know, my personal play style, and I kind of set it and forget it and use the weapons I like to use. This has absolutely forced me to pay attention to my build, sit and study my traits, study my skills, what they do, what, you know, what conditions, what boons, every single detail of all of my skills. And I thought that that was going to be very annoying to me because I've never been that into that before. But seeing our progress as we, you know, over these 3 hours, you know, so far I've raided for 6 hours. On Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to raid for another 3 hours tonight, which is a very good length of time, by the way, because after, you know, when you do get to the end of that 3 hours, everybody's kind of, you know, you have diminishing returns at that point just because people are getting tired and you know, your brain just can't process anymore at that point for most people. But being forced in the raids to pay attention to my build and stuff, I've had a blast with it. And I absolutely love that this is forcing me to pay attention to that stuff. And the greatest thing is that then when I take that main character, and I'm doing a DPS Guardian / Dragon Hunter right now, and, you know, having all Zerker armor, you know, all my trinkets are ascended. I have my you know, legendary, so I have a legendary great sword, and everything else is exotic currently. Going to work on getting my full ascended set, but just going to, like, doing my daily, like going to ore and getting my, like, ore miner. I'm like, I am destroying things in ore, whereas before, like, it was annoying when one of them, you know, came and aggroed me, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll sit here and kill them, you know, and I'm like, I killed that in 2 hits. That felt really good. And even in other parts of the game, it's making me overall care more about that build. Then I switched to my alts who have, you know, whatever build on them, and I'm like, you know, maybe I should get them, you know, some different armor. Maybe I should actually put together a build. So I love that it's changing my own mindsets about the game, and going in, I was unsure if I was going to enjoy that, but because of the progress you make in raids, you can see that progress, and as you change up your build, you know, everybody tweaks their build a little bit, and you go in and you get a little bit further, and then everybody tweaks it, and then you get a little bit further, and even though you're not, you know, we haven't downed it yet, I think the furthest progress we got was his 3rd phase, so the 2nd recombine. Right. And then we pretty much got our faces smashed in at that point. So that's the furthest that our group has gotten. But every hour we get a little further, and every night we get a little further. And so tonight I'm super excited to get further into that 3rd phase. And we don't even have to beat them. I'll just be happy if we get to that 3rd phase again and make a little bit more progress, have a little bit more survivability. And I am just loving it. I think ArenaNet made the difficulty at a perfect level.
yeah, you know, every night we have so much fun, and we have not, like Aurora, we haven't killed the boss yet. Group A has not killed the boss. And for those, there's a couple of things, I guess, that we'd like to talk about today about the way Maven does things. And I'm not saying that every guild should do this or all guilds should do this. I just want to kind of say how we approach it. First of all, we only raid for 3 hours a night, depending on, and the next thing is Group A and Group B are not separated by Group A has the best players and Group B has the leftover players or whatever. We separate it by the amount of time you have free to actually raid. So Group A is currently doing, now the holiday next week is going to screw some things up, but we're trying to do like 5 nights a week, where Group B does less nights a week. They also raid at a different time zone. So we have two different time zones we're kind of hitting here with these two groups. The other thing is we really have a big rule, and this is a hard, fast rule about constructive criticism. You're not name-calling, you're not calling people out, you're not criticizing people for, you stood in the spark again, why did you die again? You keep dying at the same point, you know? I think that's a big thing on why we're having as much fun as we are in the raid as well.
Absolutely.
We make this progress, and sure, maybe like, the first night we were getting to about 40%, and now we're getting to about a little bit below, like 33%. Then we get him back into the combined, and he's enraged, unfortunately. Our DPS is too low in Group A. But that might not seem like a ton of progress, but amongst that health progress, we're also getting way better at Phase 1. We're not dying on silly things anymore. The transition is going much smoother. We move and rotate groups around. Like, we used to have 4 people at Condi. Now we only have 3, so we have a free person that we can move somewhere else. And just the whole process has been fantastic and wonderful. And every night, I feel like players leave feeling like they've accomplished something, even though, unfortunately, we haven't killed the boss yet.
Yeah.
Now, it's not a total wipe for us, because you do get, and you do need like 300 or 400, 600, something like that, I forget the exact number. But you do need, you do get these magnetite shards by getting the boss to different phases. You get different amounts, right? So even though we're only getting him to 33% every try or so, we're still getting semi-rewarded for doing so. Now, you would have to kill him for months, and you would have to do that for months and months and months to really get rewarded. But the idea is that eventually you'll kill him, you'll get whatever rewards that he has, and then you'll move on and try and kill the next one. But your work and your attempts along the way is still giving you a little something, so that eventually you're going to get a reward, and you're going to have enough left over after a considerable amount of time, but you're going to have enough left over to then pick up a second reward that night because of the 3 weeks of work you've put in or whatever trying to learn the fights. And I think that is... I think that's a fantastic approach. There's this chance, there's an RNG chance that a mini could drop, or a special weapon could drop, or whatever. But you could also go to the vendor, and after putting in X amount of work, I can just buy that mini, because he won't drop for me for whatever reason. And so you don't feel totally left out, I think, when it comes to those rewards. And, yeah, I don't know. It's been a really great experience so far. I think that, our atmosphere and the attitude that we're bringing into it every night so far has been extremely wonderful. And even though maybe players leave tired at the end of the night, they feel satisfied with the progress. And like you were saying, Aurora, they go back later the next day and they're like, oh, what can I tweak and change here? Where can I squeeze a little bit more DPS out of my build? And I think seeing that in players who wouldn't normally think that way or do that sort of thing, I think that's just a great thing to see them experience and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some people in my guild, my Peachy Party guild, who are unfamiliar with raids, and I've always known what raids are, even though I've never actually did one. But some people don't understand. They know that it's high-level content, that it's endgame content, but they don't understand, or they don't fully realize what goes into it. Like, why is this high-level content? And so I think just for those players, I just want to talk briefly about what makes raids different than is it just a dungeon with 10 people? Like what makes it different than the other content? What makes this a raid? And I think the first thing is that that I tried to explain is that first of all, obviously it's 10 people, and it's mainly focused on, it's like a boss that you have to bring down. Now this first boss, you have 3 little mini bosses. Some people just call them trash mobs, to get to the main boss. You have the 3 pillars. You can see in the screenshot above, there's these 3 pillars. You have this circular like arena that you fight the boss in, and there's different phases that the boss goes through. But leading up to that, there's 3 mini bosses that show you the mechanics of that boss. So it basically teaches you about the mechanics and then throws you in to all of those mechanics in one. Now this may be different for the different bosses and the different, raid wings. But it's basically just a straight shot to the boss. You're not going through dungeons, you're not like dungeon crawling, you're not, doing, meeting all these NPCs and doing all this stuff. It's just a straight shot, and your goal is to kill this boss. And the difficulty is on a level where, like we've mentioned, you everybody has to be on point. Everybody is expected to have exotic or ascended everything. Right. Your build has to be on point. You have to have a certain party composition, and it's not like other games where there's this hard trinity. It's still a semi-soft trinity, but you do have to have your roles. You do have to have your DPS. You do have to have your condition damage dealers. You have to have a tank. You have to have someone who is specifically the tank, because whoever has the highest toughness is who the boss is going to follow. And even they have the very important job of positioning. They have the responsibility of positioning the boss in certain areas, and everybody kind of has their role, and it takes so much planning, and half the time you're in there, you're sitting there just staring at the arena. You're staring like you're outside the border, and you're staring in at the arena. The boss is just standing there waiting for you to come into the arena and start pummeling you. And that planning when you're sitting there, especially if you're on voice chat with a bunch of friends, and you're talking about your builds, and okay, I'm gonna, we need a healer, so someone's gonna switch to Revenant, and but they were a condition damage dealer, so we need someone else to switch to condition damage, and it's that planning, like, you just don't have that in other parts of the game. Maybe high level PvP, but that's kind of something completely different. But you don't need that in fractals. You don't need that in dungeons. To a certain extent maybe, but nothing like this. Like, everybody has to be on point. Everybody has to know their role. Everybody has to know the mechanics. And it's that kind of very intense planning that I wasn't sure, as a more casual player, I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy that aspect of it, but I love it. I've loved the experience.
And it's very, somebody on Reddit put up they kind of were collecting the different group compositions of everybody who cleared it, I think on day one, or anybody who reported clearing it on day one. And this was from named guilds to some pug groups who were able to do it. Now, on day two, that's extended. And it was interesting to see the breakdown of what people were taking, what they were not taking, which classes were the most popular, and stuff like that. And it is something that's good to note is that all the classes were represented in some form or another. Revenants, of course, for many reasons, are extremely popular. There wasn't a single group that didn't have at least one Revenant.
I blame that on just the Revenant being new and people want. I mean, come on, everybody wants the brand new shiny Revenant in their group.
Revenant is very, very good.
It is good.
Many roles, DPS especially, but many roles, and they do bring a lot to the table.
Absolutely, when we go in, we don't have a Revenant, and we just die and wipe. And then we said, okay, we need a healer. Like, we need a Ventari Revenant. And just having that little tablet zooming around the battlefield, it makes all the difference.
Now, I will say that, unfortunately, there's a couple of classes that are very underrepresented. Thief is, like, the biggest one. There was only 3 raid groups that successfully cleared it, that reported it with a Thief. Thieves, unfortunately, in PvE for raid content are in sort of a poor situation. It's not that you can't take one, it's not that you can't play one, but there's other classes that are going to bring and offer the same things, if not a little more. DPS-wise, they're not terrible at DPS or anything, but you could bring a Revenant or a Warrior who will probably out-DPS them. Condi and stuff as well, there's just some issues. Thieves need a little bit of love when it comes to raiding, I think. There's a couple of boosts and stuff that could happen that I think that would make that better. There was another class who was kind of low on the totem pole as well, and I can't remember which class it exactly was. But I will say that Revenants and Warriors, Engineers are all very high on the list. Guardians are mixed in there somewhere. Druids are very high on the list, but not exclusive. I will
Hmm.
say there's been many groups who don't have a druid at all. They run like two tempests, or they run a tempest, Ventari or something like that. They make it work in other ways. You don't have to have a druid. Although a lot of teams did take a druid because their healing is very good, very strong. So not everything is, if you play a class, like I know, like I said, thieves are not in a super awesome place right now. If you play a thief, it doesn't mean that you can't do it, or maybe that you won't be welcomed. You're very underrepresented, and I think the reason for that is that the class itself right now needs a little love as far as buffs and stuff for the raid situation. So yeah, there's some of that going on as well. But it's cool to see like that breakdown of who's playing what's their team comp, and some team comps were the same, but there was a huge amount of variety, and that's what I'm really trying to drive home is the variety that you could take at least into the first boss. We don't know a lot about the second boss yet, and who's succeeding there, but at least for the first boss, there's a lot of variety that you can take there, and I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. And it's not like there's a winning combination. There might be a lot of revenants, a lot of warriors for DPS, but there's not like, oh, you take two warriors and two revenants and two this and one this and you'll win. And it's so up to player skill. And as long as you have those defined roles. And it's maybe is it maybe because Thief, being very unrepresented, maybe doesn't fit into one of those defined roles?
Well, it's not that they don't fit into those defined roles. People are talking about Venom Share and stuff. It's just that those roles, and even there was a post by a Venom Share thief. He did it his pug group. He was successful, but even he was saying that it was a little bit lackluster. It's just that the other professions are in a much stronger, better place right now than thieves tend to be. They're not. I don't mean. Hopefully, it doesn't come across sounding like they're terrible and they're unplayable and
No,
they're
no.
broken. It's not that. It's just that if a player has a thief and they have a warrior or something like that, you could bring the warrior and probably just do more damage easier than have to like struggle to keep up with the thief's DPS or damage or something like that. So it's not totally out of the question, but thieves need a little bit of love, a little bit of work to make them on par with some of the other classes that are in the raid currently.
Something that I like also that our guild did was we asked everyone right at the beginning before Tuesday, like last week when we started having our raid meetings. We didn't force anybody to play any certain role. We're very, very open to, play what you want to play. Like anytime someone's gonna switch, someone, our B team needed more healing. Like when we didn't have anybody who their first choice was to play the healer. And any time that someone suggested, we actually at the end of last night had about 3 people who said, I'm going to start working on my druid, just in case we need a healer. And the other members of our team were very, very adamant about, we'll only do that if you want to play the healer. Just because we need one, don't force yourself to play something you
Right.
don't want to play. And, you do have to have those defined roles. Like our group pretty much never had a mesmer. And a mesmer or a chronomancer could be very, very powerful. But we never forced anyone to play it. We would suggest, halfway through the night, we said, okay, we need some kind of healer, and someone had a Ventari Revenant who was spec'd really good. So someone switched, but we never forced anybody to do that. And I think it's just very important for any group, whether it's your guild, your close friends, a pug group, just stay positive and stay supportive of each other, and don't force anybody into any role, because if someone's forced to play something they don't want to play, they're not going to perform up to par, and that's not going to be good for anyone. So we're very open about play what you want to play the class you want to play, the role that you want to play. But try to have options. Don't say I'm going to be DPS and that's the only thing I will ever play. Maybe try out a support role. You might like it. You never know until you try. And I think that this is an opportunity to let you try other roles and see if you like them. And you never know. You might surprise yourself. I didn't think I was going to like raids, but I'm loving it.
Yeah, I think the key point is be open to change, be flexible in whatever you're playing. Try and play. If you always play Guardian, try picking up another class. It's not that you can't play whatever your main is, but be flexible because certain raid compositions go better with particular builds, or maybe it's just a group of players you're playing with. If they say, "Look, we need condition," and you don't want to play condition Guardian, which is viable, by the way, then maybe have a class that you do like conditions on. There's a lot of them out there, and there's a lot that really work well together. And I think that balance-wise, it's not. I think we're in. Balance is never perfect, but I think we're in a pretty decent place. There's some classes that are way too powerful, probably, and there's some classes that are a little too underpowered. So the balance is not perfect, but it's pretty good right now, I think, overall.
And a lot of these the group compositions and stuff. Remember, guys, that this is just the first of 3 bosses, and going. I don't know what Gorseval is like. I don't know what the other mechanics.
Sabbatha.
Right, the mechanics of the other bosses are, but you might go into the second boss and need a completely different group composition. Like, I don't know, so you might have to switch between, okay, we don't need, like, our group is mostly DPS, and okay, we don't need that many DPS for this one. We need something else, or we need, something like this. Like in the first one, you require someone who can boon strip. So that person might completely change up their build, change up their profession at the second boss. You might not need that. I don't know. Maybe you do. But this is just the first. This is just the first. This is just the beginning, and that's exciting to me. And I love that. I keep going back to this, but I think that the difficulty is right on point, because you didn't have a group whose first exposure to the raids was on Tuesday and they just cleared it the first day, but you have players who aren't the most experienced players in the world going in there and not even being able to get past the trash mobs. You slowly work your way up, you slowly make progress, and even I've heard every single group that's gone in there, no matter what their skill level, slowly makes progress. And if you're more skilled players, then you make your progress faster, but you keep making progress because you learn the mechanics, and the players acquire the skills just from playing it in order to get further and further and further. I love it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've had probably some other controversy. It's not really something I think that we talk about too much on GuildGab. It's not really our style here, but I thought that we would kind of bring it up today. And that is everything that happened with D&T and clearing the raids and posting screenshots of this or that or the other, claiming first when, the community in general knows that they were testers. It wasn't a secret from anybody. They've had a lot of time with the dungeon and testing, and so it's natural that they were very good they already had their team very well established. They had lots of time to practice on all of the bosses. And so I don't know for sure how long it took them, but if you look at the Twitter feeds and stuff, I think they were about 2.5 hours, and they cleared it. Maybe it was actually shorter than that, but it was somewhere along those lines. And yeah, I don't know. So I want to address a couple of things. And really here, we're not going to make too big a deal out of it. But number one, Obel took to Reddit because there was a lot of trash talking going on about D&T, about the way that some of the members, not all of them, but the way some of the members behaved, or maybe perhaps the leadership. I don't have specifics on who was who or what was what, and I'm not going to call out particular people as far as blaming anybody, because I don't think that's constructive or helpful. But the leadership who controls their Twitter account or who was posting in particular places, they were posting some perhaps unsavory thoughts about the raids in general. And I just want to say that that's not necessarily representative of the entire guild. Unfortunately, some people get wrapped into it, and it's a little bit beyond their control. Now, yes, there are decisions you could make. You could leave the guild if you were not happy with the decision being made. But I think, like, Obel went to Reddit, and he pointed out that there's a number of members in D&T, Pernix being another one of them, who were not in favor, who begged certain people in the guild to not post those Twitter shots or the tweets or whatever the material was. They begged them and they asked them not to do so. They ignored them and did so anyway, and so now the entire guild, unfortunately, is facing this harsh repercussions of that. And in some circumstances, rightly so. You know, ArenaNet came on after seeing some of the context of which things were happening, and I believe rightly so. They said, look, you're no longer testers. You're going against what we want to promote as a company, what we want to promote for raids in general. I don't have the exact quote from ArenaNet, but it was a very on-point quote about what they expect from their testers and to some extent their partners when they're talking about content. And it's not that you can't share or express yourself in particular ways, but they were going at, like, whoever was controlling the Twitter account or whoever was making some of those posts was going out of their way to sort of say they were first at this or that, or they had a banner that said, like, hashtag first. And a bunch of salt all over the place and whatever the case is. There was some other things too, some other screenshots and whatever. And ArenaNet stepped in and said, look, this is not acceptable. They had some kind of terms and conditions between ArenaNet and D&T. Those terms and conditions were broken. And ArenaNet said, look, you're no longer going to be testers. You're out of that part of the program. They didn't ban them or anything like that, and I don't think they should have. But I think the community is smart enough, and I think the community knows that ATT, who didn't do any of this stuff, they weren't brought up at all. I have no idea what progress they're even making, and they're not publicly talking about it either. And D&T were both raid testers. They had like a month with the raid or so, and you know, I think most of us think or feel or believe that D&T really shouldn't have been posting like that they were first or that they did it before everybody else. I mean, it's no wonder. They had more time with the raid. That being said, there are very good players in D&T. There are very skilled players in D&T. And I guess just the message that I want to try and get across is that try not to be hard on all of the members of D&T. Not all of them have the same mindset or have the same thought process or, you know, don't exactly endorse what happened or what was going on. And like I said, Pernix and Obel are two people that I know for sure in D&T, and I'm sure there's many others from what I understand, but they are two that totally did not want this to happen. They're not, they don't, you know, it's a bit of a shame that some of them are being blamed for something that some of them didn't make the decision on or didn't have control for. And so someone said to Obel, like, why don't you just leave D&T then? If you don't want to be part of this, if you don't think it's acceptable, why don't you just leave? And his answer was kind of interesting and kind of on point in the sense that he said, look, there's a lot, you know, there's some members, there's some bad apples, there's some members I don't like or I don't get along with or whatever the case is, but there's a lot of them that he does get along with, that he plays the game with every day, that he has developed a bond and a friendship with. And just like, I guess just like in real life, you don't just throw your friends by the wayside because of some poor decisions that they've made. They're still his friends, and maybe he doesn't agree with them, but he's not willing to just throw that friendship away and move on to another guild. And I can't really speak for Pernix, but I think he's kind of in a similar situation, you know. So with all the trash talking that's going on, just, you know, I don't really think that the trash talking is constructive. I think everybody knows what happened, or generally knows what happened at this point. It was unsavory. It was a bit uncouth. It was, not acceptable in the eyes of ArenaNet and in the eyes of the community. And I think people are smart enough to make that decision themselves. I don't think you need to go around and say, wrecked DNT, or you all suck, or you're terrible, or whatever the case is. A number of them, they have YouTube pages, and some of them even have Twitch streams where they're there to openly share what the community builds. And maybe you don't like all their builds, or maybe you don't agree with the math behind their builds, or the math in a vacuum kind of thing. I'm certainly not 100% proponent of that sort of stuff, but their builds do provide, at least for me, maybe not for everybody, but for me, they provide a good basis for me to start with and then expand upon and see what I like. They're doing X, and I might change, Y or something because I don't like exactly this. But it's a good basis, and I think they do add a number of them add quite a bit of value to the community when it comes to builds and guides and things like that. And I don't think that all of them should be condemned for the actions of the few, I guess. So I know that there's going to be a lot of trash talk. I know it's going to continue for some time. There's going to be some salt and bad feelings that's going to happen. But I just wanted to say that. I wanted to share that with you guys. Maybe you don't agree with me. That's okay. You don't have to agree with me. But that's just how I feel about that particular situation.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is that it was a couple bad apples. I think ArenaNet was right in saying, you broke, that's not in the spirit of the game, so thus, no more testing, but we're not going to ban you or anything for it. It was just bad form by some people. And I think we all just need to look at the, hashtag first or world first, I basically just, in my mind, erase that. No, you weren't. You were a tester.
Right.
That puts you in a completely other category that puts you that exempts you from it. It just look at it like that. It's really, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. It was just some bad form by some people who thought they were being cute, and ArenaNet addressed it. So I think we all just need to move on, and I don't think anybody besides them has defeated the entire raid yet. If they have, I don't think they've said anything, right? I haven't heard of anybody who's defeated the entire thing.
I've heard some whispers and rumors. I haven't seen anything confirmed. And ArenaNet's not really a company that confirms these world firsts usually.
Right. It's just a community.
And I
thing.
haven't really seen it cleared on Reddit, but there are some very good guilds out there. I'll just use Snow Crows as an example, who generally don't. They don't post. At least they don't post on Reddit, as far as I know. Not very often, anyway. Their progress. So I have no idea what kind of progress those guys are making. I know that King and Mist, which is the guild that Wood and Potatoes is in, they have all made very good progress. But I think they're all on the second boss. At least they were on the second boss as of last night. Maybe they've killed it and moved on since then. But I think a number of guilds, the sickest guild, NA, who was the big beta test heroes who killed the boss first, and they had a very fast clear again on the first boss this time around. Not a big surprise. They're very good players. I know that they killed Gorsival yesterday, so they're on the final boss. I'm not sure what kind of progress they've made, but yeah.
I just want the fun. I don't care whoever has the prestige of being the ones who killed it first. I just say, yay, good for you. My favorite part of it is seeing a video and hearing the team speak of the cheers and the happiness and the sense of accomplishment from those people, especially if you are one of the world first, anyone. I want you 3 months from now. I want this, maybe Maven. 3 months from now, I want us to defeat, the third boss and just, revel in our accomplishment. And who cares if we were first? I just want that sense of accomplishment and the camaraderie because we all did it together. I love that. I love watching that video of the world first or one of the world first jungle worm kills, and everyone is just you can hear the exasperation yet elation in their voice, and it's just it fills you with adrenaline because it's what like Guild Wars 2 tries to be all about is community, and all those people came together, and these being smaller groups of people, you have 10 friends that came together to defeat it. And I know Richie was trying to kind of tell us about how that felt in World of Warcraft, and I know a lot of people did a lot of raiding in other games, but he's like, when you finally beat it, that sense of accomplishment is like no other rush that you get in a game, and I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah, I just a little update because of chat. Thank you guys very much. Both Snowcrows, who's a EU guild, and the Sickest Guild NA, who is North American Guild, I'm 99% sure. They're both on the third boss. Mist might also be on the third boss. Nice. That's the Guild WP is on as well. And I know King is very, very close to being on that third boss sometime tonight. I'm sure they'll make it there. But I like seeing that race, and I like viewing the progress. I'm not really part of that, that whole situation, but it's still fun for me to watch, and it does give some bragging rights as to who gets there first. Some people won't care about that. They'll never care about that. And that's okay. If you don't care about it, then you don't have to care about it. No. But I know that, when I was there for the Quado's first kill, there was a lot of excitement when it goes down for that. And there is this great feeling that comes from that. And even though EU killed Triple Trouble Worm like 4 days before NA ever did, it might even been 5 days. Even when we did get the kill, NA's North America's first kill, that was very exciting and very cool. So I love making that kind of progress. I love being in those spots because there is a lot of pressure to try and perform and get it done properly and all that. But it's also fun to sit on the sidelines and watch others make that progress. And then when they release videos, which, by the way, D&T did release a video of warrior perspective and tank perspective of the first boss, it's fun and interesting to see. Like, we know Group A and B, how we've been killing the boss and how we've been doing things, right? It's interesting to see somebody else's first kill or their first attempt on, or whatever the case is, on how they fight the boss. What are they doing differently than we are? How much time was there left on the clock when they killed it, et cetera, et cetera. And those are always fun for me to watch, at least like the first couple of kills that these people get, that these guilds get. And so that's fun for me. I realize that might not be fun for everybody, but I enjoy watching that race, So I look forward to seeing who comes out on first and second, etc.
Yeah. It's fun. So the squad UI came with raids, and this was something that I was very nervous about because that was the reason that we didn't get a lot of beta testing. The general community didn't get a lot of beta testing with the raids because the weekend that they let us play it, half of the weekend it was closed because the squad UI wasn't working. So I was very nervous. I was like, please let it work properly. I don't want the unveiling of raids to be instantly shut down because the squad UI isn't working. And I love it. I love
Yeah.
that you can... I just love that you can have basically a party of 50 people. Like, I mean, it makes things so much easier for, like, my peachy parties or, like, a stream when you want people to just be able to join you. And, like, I want to see 50 little blue dots all over the map or following me around. It's great.
The squad UI is really well done. Worked. We haven't had any issues with it. The one thing I will say is, it would appear, and maybe I'm doing this wrong, somebody can correct me, but it seems like you're locked into a red commander tag. Whoever the leader is has a red commander tag. I wasn't able to switch the color, or I couldn't figure out how to switch the color. I don't know if I can't switch the color, if it has to stay red. I'm not really sure how that goes.
I think I had not. I think you whatever interface you have to pick the color, I think you do that first, and then you make a squad. I'm not 100% on that.
So it sounds like maybe choose which color you want first, then create your squad.
Right, I think so.
So, like, I took over as a squad leader, and I guess I didn't realize I needed to do that, and so I was stuck with red. Mm-hmm. So maybe they could add something in, and maybe, like, we could change that later or something.
I've seen some feedback. I've seen people saying that they don't want... What if you don't want a commander tag up? Because you could have people with squads in PvE in the open world who don't want to command for the map. For example, I've been talking about doing a stream and taking people, who want to join me on the stream and going and doing adventures or whatever in the jungle. But then you have people thinking that, oh, are you trying to command for the map event, for the meta event? Well, no, I have a squad for my friends or my viewers. So that's one piece of feedback, is that people want to be able to not have a commander tag while they have a squad open.
While they're in the group.
Right. Also, if you switch to you can toggle the UI. You can toggle the squad UI. You can either have those boxes that are in green when your health is full, and it's very easy to see everybody's health. And then you can switch to just the list. And right. The list will show you just those in your squad. I love the drag and drop for sub squads is so perfect. But then when you switch to that list, it only shows you those in your squad, and that could be useful or not useful. I would like to have maybe a toggle for if you want to see everybody in the squad or just those in your sub squad. And also when you're on the list view, having a little check mark for ready checks, because if you're in that view, you can't see the ready checks. So you have to switch back.
Yeah, the ready checks are kind of interesting. They time out after a little while. So, if it's not really a big deal, because you can cancel the ready check and re-ready check up. It's not the end of the world, I guess. But I do know that a couple of times we would get up and get ready to do the boss, and I would do a ready check, and somebody wasn't ready. So then we're waiting around, and then it's he's like, oh, I can't, it went away, I can't click it or whatever. Mm-hmm. So then you just have to re-ready up. It's not really a big deal. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little quality of life thing. But it was great. We had a funny incident where we lost Mazda. He crashed, his computer crashed or whatever. And before you guys had started to raid last night, we pulled Richie in for one attempt because we just needed a body until he got back. So we did the attempt, and Richie must have been dead, and Mazda had popped back on in the middle of the fight, and I happened to be the raid leader, and before Bog could resurrect himself, I kicked him from the squad, which immediately kicks you out of the raid, and he ended up at the bottom of a canyon somewhere in Verdant Brink as dead Norn, or threw him out of the raid. It was pretty funny, but normally it places you right outside the front door, but maybe because he was pulled in from somewhere else, it threw his dead body out of the raid because I kicked him, and that was hilarious. Yeah.
So just little tiny quality of life things. Overall, it's a very, very good system.
Love it.
And I'm sure they'll tweak it as we go on, and they get feedback. The raid lobby being not a lobby, being out in the open world, is a bit of an issue as well.
Right. So for those who, I think a good number of people are aware, but in case you're not aware, you enter the raid via Verdant Brink. It's in the top right-hand corner, and you kind of just, a lot of people, especially if you're looking for a group, or maybe you're trying to put together a pug group, or you're waiting for the rest of your raid, you can't enter the raid until you're actually in a raid group. So a lot of people stand around outside and milling about and such, and that's not anything against those players. That's what you do. You're waiting to get into the raid. You're waiting to get into the group. Maybe you win AFK and you're standing there. The problem is it affects the meta event. It terribly affects the map's meta event. And so some kind of lobby, Mazda or somebody was telling me, a Super Adventure Box lobby, where you just go into a lobby and you can sit there and form different groups. Everybody can go in there. It's an instance. Everybody can go in, and if it fills up, that makes another instance, whatever. But some kind of raid lobby, and then from the lobby, you can then, go into the raid itself, and this would take players off of the actual Verdant Brink map or something like that. Sounds simple, probably, but probably not as simple as I make it sound, Sure, yeah, just make a lobby. It's not a big deal. Sure, there's a lot of work that goes into that, but I think, I think that something probably needs to be done about it, because the Verdant Brink maps are really kind of it's problematic for those people who are actually in the map and wanting to do the meta events and stuff. And you might say well, just go to LFG and find a different map, find a map that's doing the meta event. The problem is those raiders who come out or who are standing around, they that will fill up very quickly and they'll spill into other maps. So you still have 2 or 3 people just standing around doing nothing, taking up space when you're really trying to push a meta event. And sometimes those meta events, you really need as many people as possible, even in Verdant Brink, to really kind of push that event along. So
I'm
just
really
a quality
surprised.
of life thing.
Absolutely, I'm a little surprised that they didn't think of this. They did so well designing these raids, and a raid lobby is, I think, kind of a standard thing. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't, consider this. But I can definitely see it being something that they implement, because it very obviously is, like you said, affecting those meta events and affecting the map. And even the area outside of that, that's this giant ominous red portal to go
Yeah.
into the raid, and almost like, noobs beware, to do not enter, and you can't enter it unless you're in a raid group anyway. But like the little cliffside, like outside, is so small, and there's like
Yeah.
just all these players on this like little platform, and it's just awkward the way they designed it. So I could see them. I can see them implementing something like that. I hope that they could add it in, even though this raid is already in the game. I can see it like absolutely for future raids. I hope that this is something, like you said, I don't know how hard it is to program, but something that they can kind of put in afterwards, for this one. So I hope. Otherwise, it's like, what, you just forever ruined your Verdant Brink map because of all these raiders. It just doesn't make any sense.
And I think it's more of a problem now. Like, so in the old world, you have dungeons and stuff, and there's lots of people stand outside dungeons. Ascalon Catacombs, for example,
That's true.
is just like people just stand out there and
That's
AFK, whatever. And that really has never been too big of an issue. And I think one of the reasons is, yes, there's meta events that happen in those maps, but those maps don't have a map-wide meta event that's trying to be pushed. So
Right.
I think there's a small, tiny, little slight difference there. There are other solutions. Maybe you don't need a lobby. Maybe you can just put an entrance in LA somewhere, and most people would probably just hang out there rather than, you could go to like, maybe once you unlock it, then you can use the one in LA, or I don't know. I think there's other solutions that it doesn't have to be a raid lobby, but
Yeah.
some sort of solution where it's not affecting the map so much or something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there any other kind of final thoughts that we have about raids? I think we mentioned just about all of it.
Yeah, I mean, just that we're having a good time. As far as our progress, speaking for both of us,
Yep.
both Group A and B and Maven, neither one of us have killed the boss yet. We're in the 33% or less area of the boss, so we're getting closer. We're getting closer every single day that we try and raid and fine tune, But we're having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Everybody that I've played with so far has been loving it. The only negative feedback I've really heard so far is that, some players really want to try it. They really want to get in there and they're excited, but they don't have a guild, or they don't have a proper raid group, or the guild they're in is not interested in raiding for whatever reason. And some people won't be. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So the only complaint is that people want to do it and they can't actually do it, or they can't find a solid group to do it. And maybe it's just me. If I could invite everybody into my party, I would, but that's just unfortunately not a reality. It's not something I can do. It's not something I have the power to do either, but I wish you all, for those who want to try it, I wish you all the best luck. It is a lot of fun, especially if you're with a group of players that on a fairly decent basis, or can form, a raid relationship with. I think it can be a very wonderful experience. I think ArenaNet hit it out of the ballpark. They've done a wonderful job, at least with the first raid wing. We don't know much more than that.
Right.
But so far, I am looking forward to more. And, raids are fun.
I think for those of you who want to get a raid group together or do raids with your guilds, just want to reiterate this. Set some guidelines, such as only raid for a certain amount of time, because for Maven we do 3-hour blocks, because if any more than that, your faculties kind of try to start to break down. People need breaks. Make sure to take a break in the middle of your raiding session. Stay positive. Don't be criticizing, coming down hard on someone because they're dying all the time. Be constructive, be helpful, try to, figure out, okay, what are they doing wrong? Is it a mechanic thing? Is it a build thing? Work with everyone in your group. Just stay positive. Don't rage quit. It's a raid. You're gonna wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe, and you're gonna die a lot. So just go in with that mentality. Keep it fun. Keep it light. Be positive and supportive of each other. Let people play the classes and the roles that they want to play. Suggest other roles. Try and be a player that you have alternate multiple roles that you can play. Maybe you can play DPS or support, whether it's the same character with a different build or a different profession altogether. Just try and be versatile, because you do have to have a certain composition of players when you go in. But never force anyone to play a certain spec that they don't want to play. Just have fun with it and make that slow progress and understand that it's going to be slow progress, but just be positive, and it's going to be a good experience for you. We did have a good question, the last question before we go to the post show. Obi asks, 'cause this actually came up last night after our raid. Do you think that add-ons or mods like DPS meters and something like I don't know what WoW's DBM means would be good for Guild Wars 2? But we were talking about this last night. Is that eventually, once everybody knows the mechanics, once everybody knows their roles and kind of understands, you get to a point where, okay, we just need to bring the boss down faster. So where are we lacking? Like who's doing the least DPS? So just, not in order to like single someone out, but just to kind of help guide someone. I think that's something like being able to share your build like in chat or something. I understand deadly boss mode, okay? I understand that implementing something like that can bring about the, okay, share your build, share your armor, and, having like groups needing hard requirements before they'll invite you into their group. But I think that something like that could help with trying to help your friends, someone who's lacking in DPS, for example. You could more easily suggest things to them. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So a couple things. So deadly boss mods, or however it's said, that's like a warning system that says like Veil Guardian is going to do to X or something. I don't think that needs to be in Guild Wars 2. I think that, and they've done this a little bit where they've toned down some of the skills. Like Fireball is now, some people were making a joke where Fireball used to be a fireball. Now it's like a little Spitfire that you throw out because it's because it's been toned down. But certainly some of the effects still need to be toned down some more. And once that happens, then I don't really like, or I don't see the need for this deadly boss mods thing. I think that you can pay attention and watch the boss and know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. And certainly in any of our raids, you guys have different calls than we have, but the general information is the same. Where is the green circle? You guys call it the sizzle. Where is the sizzle? When is he gonna lay down the teleport stuff? There's an animation for that. He turns away from the tank to do it, etc. So I think that's fine. I don't think we really need that in Guild Wars 2. And I know this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but that's okay. I definitely want damage meters. Either group damage meters, personal damage meters, however you want to implement it. I think it solves a lot of problems. I do understand and I do sympathize that it causes problems as well. I think there is a certain amount of elitism already in the game. For as friendly or for as good as a community that I really do believe we do have, there are certain places you could go or groups that you can join where elitism is just running rampant. Certain parts of the community are very much about this elitism, and many of those arguments stem from the fact that there's no damage meter in game to really gauge actual DPS. You've got to watch your log and add it up and blah blah blah, and that's not the right way to do math. This is the right way to do math and spreadsheets and all this other crap. Damage meters will stop some of that, but what problems does it create? Yes, it pushes more elitism. It creates a much larger problem for pug groups because you will get singled out, you will get called out. Now, if it's a personal meter, it's not as big a deal, or it's not as impactful. It is still a problem, or it is still sort of a problem. I would like to see damage meters added. I fully and certainly understand why some people do not want them. Probably other raid experiences or other MMOs they've played where they've had damage meters as an add-on or built into the game, they've had probably very negative experiences with them because people will call you out for not doing enough DPS. They will call you out for not doing enough healing, etc., etc. And not everybody is going to have the type of groups that we have where there's an understanding not to do that, you know. And it does create some problems, but it has a bunch of benefits as well. Number one, players can give more critical feedback to ArenaNet on problems with skills. You can more easily identify when skills are not working properly, where the numbers are off, gauge yourself better. You can test your personal DPS and perfect a rotation for your class, where, let's say, if you're playing and you're like, I'm only doing 11k, but Bog is doing 20k. Why is he doing so much more damage than me? You can then sit and compare. What am I doing wrong? It gives you better self-analysis. For those who do build guides, not really my thing, but for those who do build guides, it gives you a better tool to say, look, here's my rotation, here's the build, here's exactly how much damage I did. No more of this arguing over, well, if I had this buff, and this buff, I do this much damage in a vacuum or whatever. So there are a lot of benefits. And in a raid situation, it lets you adjust and say, hey guys, I'm not doing enough damage, or we know we need to hit the 6-minute mark for that first split, and we're at 5:15. Well, you know, where can we improve our damage? Am I not doing this right or something? It basically allows for more analysis of the game, not just for us to give feedback to ArenaNet, but for feedback for ourselves, within our groups, within the guild, the community, etc. And I think it's really good for those situations. Like I said, there are some negative aspects to it. There are some negative issues, and some, you know, if you really want damage meters, then there's not really a great way to stop that from happening. It's just going to happen. It's a natural progression when somebody can measure you against somebody else. And that kind of sucks. And it does suck to be like, you know, be berated because you're not doing good. But I think you just need to, it's very difficult. You just need to take it in stride in those situations and just say, you know what? That's okay. I can improve because I can learn and do this, you know?
Yeah.
I want to say it. I understand why some people don't want to see it, but... And do I think Guild Wars 2 is really going to give it to us? I really don't believe they're going to, unfortunately. It's kind of against what they've been promoting so far. If I could persuade them, I absolutely would try to, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is all for GuildGab this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please check the description here on YouTube for all of our links. And if you're watching live on Twitch, check the chat and stay tuned for the post show. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week at the same time, same day, and we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.